All right, quite a lot to go over this morning. Gonna make sure we're all locked and loaded. Also, I'm not streaming this, or at least these shows, on X, because I had some questions related to that. Just because I'm showing so much on the screen, I can only stream on X at 720, and I'd rather just do on YouTube. But good morning, everybody. Let me bring stuff up on the screen here so we can talk about it. I'm gonna do a very similar show to the one I did yesterday. So if you were there, you pretty much know um, the course of action that'll happen. First and foremost, um, talk about our memberships. Now, yet again, hinted at, kind of showing who we pretty much will have a partnership with in the future, as we are like literally getting stuff squared away. I know for a fact these prices will go up probably around April. I'm just saying, like, if you haven't joined already, if you want to be locked in, these are probably it's probably the best last month for you to get in. Note with the NASCAR stuff, you do get my projections. You get sheets, projection, and access to the Discord. So maybe some of the stuff is too expensive for you. You just want to be in the Discord and use the NASCAR stuff. That you can also get in there as well. But I mean, for everything you're gonna be getting, I would highly advise you to join now, especially if you're pondering, as I know several people are, about when they're gonna grab the annual package. I would advise you to do it before the price change. Now, with the great ability that when your company owner wins Millionaire Maker, you can bring on more tools, you can bring in more people. This is what Astukas has been offering, or at least one of the things he's been doing. I'll show you another thing towards the end of this video, but he's been putting together. Now, you might call these articles. I just look at them in more of a like a data analytical point of view. I think it's much more easier to digest than a bunch of words. At least this is how I look at data and stuff. So I found him um, collecting all this and putting it into more of a visual representation, a lot more easier to digest and stuff. But similar to yesterday, when we're looking at the configuration that they're doing to COTA, or at least the new configuration that running, obviously we're running more laps, and so we need to better have, or not better, but we need to look at tracks that offer around, the 95 lap margin, so we can have an idea of, the distribution of fast laps and laps led and stuff like that. And like I said, this is why I'm at a 1080, so you guys can see this. If you want access to this, I mean, all you gotta do is just join the Discord. This stuff will be on the site behind the paywall, probably also entering the month of April, but just to show you where all this stuff is. And yet again, if you download this in the Discord, you can go over and look at things in more detail in case you're curious on where the min max is and of the distribution of these points and everything. Now we're noticing that obviously you're getting your laps led and fast laps by the guys up front. And clearly, there's a big discrepancy in the speed between the field, between the fast guys and slow guys. We saw that yesterday. We saw it in practice for the Cup Series, which we'll look at that. We'll look at practice data after this, and then we'll talk about line construction and stuff like that. Obviously, if you're leading laps, you're most likely to finish in the top of the field, if not be if not be the winner, and you can very easily see just the situations of pretty much where we're at in terms of laps led by the winning driver in this race. Same thing with the distribution of dominator points and stuff, um, and so on and so forth. Now, the thing that I found really helpful yesterday, or at least a good talking point, was the um, when you look at the top lap leaders and fast lap getters in these races, and you then look at the amount of laps led and fast laps these guys got, it gives you a good idea of what the realistic projections for the drivers in these races should be. Okay. Now, yet again, we have Tyler Reddick starting on the pole. Bubbles, I'm not sure what Bubbles is going to do. I hate to tell you that. I don't think Bubba Wallace is going to win the race today. But when you look at the people up front in the race, we have Reddick, Chase Elliott, stuff like that. When we look at where these guys are starting, okay, and you get examples of where they're starting, and you look at where people fall in line between lap sled and fast lap stuff. Any excuse me, hold on. any realistic, projection for fast laps and stuff should fall in line, between for your highest guy. It should probably fall in line between like 12 and like 28 and somewhere around there. I think that's probably a realistic trajectory to put, fast laps for your basically the race winner. And then if we're looking at laps led between these guys, and you're also looking at where these guys are starting, we don't necessarily need to expect Tyler Reddick to run away with this race. I have my doubts about that, but yet again, we'll talk about it in general. But we're also seeing that like the Hendrick guys have just been insane when they are able to start up front and be there, especially when we look at the races that like I would look specifically at Watkins Glen, at Sonoma, as the two major guys for that, and then probably the Indy Road Course with how fast the Indy Road Course was compared to other places and stuff like that. When we look at the teams, obviously, it's Hendrick and Joe Gibbs. Like, there's no surprise there. This is pretty much all Tyler Reddick at 23-11. We'll talk about that in general. As kind of we get through. I'm just trying to get through this so everybody can kind of see this and at least have a reference of what we're talking about. We talked about this yesterday of where each driver has fallen between finishing starting and finishing position. So like if you have this, you can go over and see, hey, where did the guys who qualified in the back, what were some of their outcomes and who were those drivers? Are the guys who start in the back a bunch of like shitters and stuff, or is it like guys that make sense of why they would be back here? And then we also look back at like, hey, situations of like Hamlin blowing his motor when he started first, so on and so forth. Situations here. I mean, I'm kind of concerned, not that we have a DNF here, but we look at the amount of times that Reddick has started up front in these races, and I mean, we're just seeing two right off the bat here. But I mean, if you go through and you can look at where these guys are kind of falling and stuff. The main points distribution yesterday, we see it slightly higher. Obviously, there's more laps. Yesterday, we were looking at a situation where it was pretty much right at the 40s and like high 30s as your point distribution between the top 10 finishers. Here we see a slight increase in that. So if we're looking at the Cup Series, we're looking at a lot of guys in the 40s and certainly like your high guys in the 50s. Obviously, I mean, even if we're looking at the 10th best guy, your median for that driver is right at 40 points. Okay, so like the cutoff, or when we're looking at drivers based on a projection, the DraftKings points like by default has to be like high 30s, 40s, if not like a hard cut at 40, right? I mean, we're seeing your min is 38. We start going up 38, 38.9. This is 40. Like that should be the cutoff. If we can't realistically see a driver scoring that, then they're unplayable. Let's see what else we got here, and yeah, and so on and so forth. This is the main thing. We also have FanDuel analysis because Stukas plays over there as well. And then like for the Cup Series, like I play FanDuel just for the Cup Series and stuff too. I'm not really gonna talk about FanDuel a lot because product is kind of ass and the website's kind of ass. I haven't had any issues personally with FanDuel support, but that's because I just don't ask him anything. FanDuel's a pretty terrible product. But we can look at that and the fact that they have the laps completed stat, so we at least have that to look at as well. Now, I mean, the main reason being is like we're gonna have so many people on the lead lap. That's not really a concern at other tracks. That's much more important. And then we look at the point distribution. Actually, this finishing distribution, my bad. Between your dominators and stuff, and so on and so forth. Now, when we look at the Cup Series practice stuff, now, yet again, we have the two practice sessions. I have personally, yet again, this is my show. I get to do whatever I want. This is me just talking about how I approach a slate and stuff like that. I'm not looking at practice one. I typically don't do that if we have two sessions. Now, yet again, because we have a lot of new people watching me, like clearly based on the questions I get on Discord and Twitter and stuff. Shorthand, like I used to work at race cars, like that was my job out of high school and stuff. Just from that point of view, I really don't pay attention to first practices at all if we have the option for second practice. When you compare the laps, yet again, thank you. Shout out abnormally distributed for um, having the data in a way that I prefer for road courses. So I typically lead to his stuff more than my own stuff on road courses. When we get to 1.5s and short tracks, I like to use my stuff. When we have two different practice sessions, typically, especially on a new configuration, the first one is there. I mean, everyone across the board was pretty much slower in the first session than the second one. Everybody was able to make adjustments. Everybody was able to see the track. Most people got at least 9 to like 13 laps in the first session. And so for me, I'd much rather look at session number 2 than like the opening session. We're looking at here top 5 averages. Now this is not consecutive. This is just the 5 fastest laps and the ranking of that. This is the average for these laps. Now I removed a lot of the slow ones. We could argue that for the most part, yet again, this is times in seconds. Okay, we're seeing that the Xfinity cars are faster than the Cup Series, and so yesterday, where we saw a lot of guys in like the 98s and slightly faster than this, I wasn't, or I was kind of hesitant on using like 103s and 102s for Xfinity. For the Cup Series, I'm gonna I'm leaving them in. I removed anything over like a 1-3 outside of like Cody Ware and stuff. Um, and I mean, we could probably like we understand that Cody's the slowest, right? So we can just remove him entirely, and we see that 102 is not out of the range of possibilities for these drivers. Okay, now yet again, when we're looking at the distribution of points on DraftKings from a fantasy perspective, we're looking at high 30s to 40s, right? Okay, now we understand that there's a lot of people who are um, just slower in this race. Like, it's going to be really difficult for people who qualify in the back, like Josh Berry. I can't think of anybody else who's in the back at the moment. Ty Dillon, okay, we're slow for a reason, right? Where's Cole Custer at? Hey, we're slow for a reason. It's going to be very difficult for people to go through the field if they're slow. Okay, so yet again, I was much more, at least this year, I'm going to be a lot more aggressive on playing guys in the top half of the field versus the back half of the field. Okay. When you look at the rankings for these drivers and we look at the top 20, right? Again, kind of going to do the same visual representation that we did yesterday. These are your top 20 guys in terms of their 5-lap averages. Now, we might be, cut it close on some of these, but whatever, right? And then we there compare that to the averages. Now, yet again, we have some people who didn't run long enough. Pretty much the only one in real noteworthy fashion is SVG. And we look at where these guys are at. Hey, man, if they're in green on both of these and they're in the top 20 on both of these, they're probably a decent play. Okay. Now, we can also find or have an idea of where the safer value plays are going to be. Now, yet again, we have a very soft pricing this week, and we're going to talk about Joe. We're going to talk about Nemechek first. Now, I'm not really a fan of really any like 5K driver across the board. It seems to me I'm going to be building because I mean I've already done a good portion of my lineups, and man, that was like a weak cough, dude. That was like an anime cough. Fucking Minecraft. Ugh. I'm building a lot of balanced lineups and stuff, but if I am like leaning towards like 5K drivers, Nemechek tends to be the guy that I'm looking at. Now, this is pretty atrocious. Okay, now this is just just like I said, another thing to look at really fast. This is just the road course rankings, and we see Nemechek way down here at the bottom, right? Okay, not a big fan of how poor he is compared to other drivers, but 21st and 21st at the two tracks that I would look at heavily for this race. And again, we're not worried about the laps for somebody in the back of the field because they're not competing for fast laps or laps led or whatever. But the fact that Nemechek has been not terrible at this racetrack, he's starting 33rd this week, very similar to last year at Watkins Glen. I don't hate Nemechek, okay? Because yet again, by our like kind of measurement over here, it's like, hey, Nemechek's in 20th on averages. He's 20th on 5-lap averages. Like he's starting 33rd. Like okay, maybe he might not be that terrible of a player, right? Past that, just because that when I was looking at stuff yesterday, he was kind of the one that stood out. You can argue Zane Smith as well, but I'm gonna try and just be hesitant on played many of the 5K guys in general. Also, I'll check chat in a second. I appreciate the aid to you guys watching at the moment. We then look at who else is in here who is either starting up front or who is, at a softer pricing than somebody. And so when we look at where Larson is, like Larson is starting seventh, we see that, yet again going back to where um way up here of what Hendrick has been able to do. We look back at the races that Hendrick has won lately, and we look at who are some of the best drivers in these races. We look at Larson, we look at where we at Willie, and we need Bowman. And you look at these three drivers here, okay? Now, yet again, Austin has been, if I'm not mistaken, one of Larson's worst tracks as of late, but still, like, able to show speed. He's going to be starting seventh, very much in play. We look at Byron as well. I really, really like Byron today. I mean, starting 15th with, enough upside to show that, hey, he's gone from mid-pack to decent finishing positions as well. Same thing with Alex Bowman. Oh, we haven't even looked at Chase Elliott. What am I doing? And we look at Elliott here, who I think is actually probably my favorite play today. Now, I have obviously a ton of Reddick. Everything's going to say play Reddick, but from a build perspective, I really, really like the potential that Chase Elliott offers today at a pretty decent discounted rate. When we're looking at the grid, and I know I'm kind of bouncing around here, but I'm going through the practice data, and then we'll look at the grid in a second. But when we look at the people who are starting up front, and we look at where's Hocevar at? Where's Carson at? Not a fan of how little laps Carson ran. Now, that's not a concern of like, oh, what's wrong with the car, whatever. I just don't trust Hocevar starting fourth, right? That's where I'm at. Okay. I don't trust Bubbles starting second. I just don't see Wallace doing anything, right? I don't think it's worth playing Bubba Wallace. I don't think it's a situation where I need to start in second. I mean, these are all finishes that just the outlier would be he performs well today from a DraftKings perspective. He's starting second. Okay. We look at the history of the last 10 races outside of Chicago. Like the outlier for Bubba Wallace today would be finishing in the top three. Like that's not what I tend to lean into or what I want to do there. Okay. And so when we're looking at the front runners, you have or the people starting up front, you have Reddick, who I think has a pretty easy jump to the lead right off the bat, with Wallace and Hocevar around him. Then we have Chase Elliott. We have Suarez, who's also, if I can spell his name right, who's also, in both of the sections that we're looking at. We then have SVG, which yet again didn't run the 5 lap, but we know what Shane is able to do. It's not very shocking. Now, you do remove his fast lap, he drops pretty significantly, but like he's SVG. We don't really need to lean too much into what that is, especially with how decently fast the entirety of Trackhouse is. Now, where is Ross? Yeah, pretty much the entirety of Trackhouse has cars in the top 20, so I'm not concerned about that. And SVG was having brake issues. Not like, oh my gosh, are we worried about that? Like he was having brake bias issues that should be fixed in the race. Not concerned there. So I'm playing like no Bubba Wallace, no Carson Hocevar. Like those are clearly like the two guys that I would not play today. Anyway, past that, I want to play people that are highlighting green here. So like who's mispriced or underpriced? We look at Briscoe, who showing pretty decent speed, starting pretty deep in the field. I mean, that would make a lot of sense. We look at Bell, who like just play the fucking guys in green, kind of the same strategy as yesterday. I'm going to be very heavy on a lot of the front runners in this race. And so like you look at where everybody's at in terms of price, and like Kyle Busch at 77 seems to make a lot of sense. Gibbs at 84, Connor at 87, Byron at 10,000. I mean, Byron being the most expensive guy at 10K, it's very easy to fit him in there. We look at Briscoe. Now, Joe Gibbs has had quite a lot of ups and downs at these tracks for the road courses, but Briscoe in much better equipment now than what he was in before. And I mean, it might be a little bit farther out from what Briscoe is able. We look at what Briscoe is able to do with the SHR car, and we see he had some pretty decent runs at some of the faster tracks. Okay, now Obviously not like the best stuff, but I don't mind Briscoe at whatever the fuck his price is. What is he? 74. I like Bell, Bowman clearly. And then we start getting into a situation of like, yet again, we don't really need the 5K guys in this race. If price is already soft and we're using a lot of guys in the 9 and 7 and stuff like that, we then get into a head to head between a lot of the 5 and 6K guys in the backfield. Also, we'll talk Cindric, whatever. I very similar to Ryan Preece. I think you like put Cindric in for like 55% and you pull and just move on. No real reason to talk more on what Cindric can do. We'll let this poor little guy load up. Cindric starting last on any of these finishing positions would absolutely work. We don't really need to talk about Cindric any more than that. But anyway, we look at the kind of more expensive guys in the 20s. You look at Logano, Busher, Blaney, Keselowski. I'm probably not going to play Keselowski as he's been horrific at road courses, but I like the upside that Logano, Busher, and Blaney have over somebody like Priest, Custer, Herbst, Jones, etc. Okay, there's not really that much separating these guys in terms of salaries. I know it seems that way, but if you're building, we're not in a situation to where we're really like desperate to save money. And we look at what Logano could do. We look at where Busher and Blaney. You look at where Busher is. Like clearly, we're interested in Busher. We need to go into that. We look at where Blaney is. Okay, so like all top 14 guys in terms of history at road courses at the moment. Just looking at this, we then look at where these guys are in practice stuff. We look at Bell. We look at Blaney. We look at Logano, all in green. These are the guys that I would prioritize than more of the 5K guys. So a lot of my builds are looking a lot more balanced than traditional, or at least how I would usually build. Now, with that said, we then have to worry about possible duplication. I'm not really concerned about that, but a lot of my lineups will be leaving anywhere from 0 to probably like 600 on the board. Um, and so, I mean, there's a lot of ways to go about that, but we just, at least for me, I'm being aware that I'm probably a lot closer to the salary cap than I am normally. Um, so that is a point of contention here, or at least a noteworthy point here. Now, I've been live for 20 minutes. I'll go ahead and look at whatever you guys are saying here. And if you guys have any questions and stuff, we'll talk about that as we go along. What's going on, Andy? What's going on, Pirate? What's going on, BVP? Haven't seen you in a while. Hope you've been well. What's going on, Riz? Let's see. Well, so like the Carson thing. It's not odd because like, dude, we're with SS Greenlight Racing, dude. No radio, no spotter, no communication. Like, I would get the fuck out too, man. Like, dude, screw SS Greenlight. Okay, Jake wants to talk Connor. Okay, what avenue would you like to talk about with Connor, Jake? Because I don't know where you want that conversation to lead. So if you want to talk Connor, we can talk Connor and stuff like that. While we wait for, and I feel like at this point I've talked about everything I need to. Well, obviously we'll stay here, but at this point I'm just going to be answering questions and stuff. Now, while I wait for Jake to respond here, another one of the tools that we will be adding soon for TrueDFS on the website is a contest review stuff. And right now it's for NASCAR, but we expect it to be for MMA, tennis, and golf because those are the most similar in terms of the back end of what you would need to do and what a Stugas would need to do to add it to the list. But we could very quickly analyze like yesterday's stuff. Now, what I do is the way I track my lineups and stuff. Like this is clearly yesterday's stuff. Like this is what I track and how I build my stuff. So these are all the lines I built yesterday with my percentage through 16. Sheets' ownership, which tends to be pretty close to what the field ends up doing. But what you can do is, shout out to the 2 cents in the account I have. You always got to like double check as a tout because you're like, what do you got $2 in the account? It's because I got like fucking 700 entries, right? But you look at what you'll be able to do is obviously, export the CSV, and then whoops, let's refresh here. and then you can throw the whatever CSV you want to for whatever thing is, and we'll get a detailed overview of what the slate is. And so, like, just for example, this is the Xfinity Series slate. Yesterday, when we look at the max, and now this is the entirety of what the fuck, how many people were in here, dude? 13,600 people, right? So you look at how many MMA guys were there of 150 entry. There was 28 users of that, accounting for 4,200 entries in the slate, which accounts for just under 1% of the contest. We look at the individuals who account as a medium player, anybody from 21 to 100. That's 64 users, single entry, and then small multi. I typically fall in the 20 just because I just do 20. We then look at the most duplicated lineups in the which that's crazy. That had to be a that I haven't looked at this yet. That's crazy. That's an MME. That has to be an MME dummy lineup that did not get changed. There's no fucking way. That sucks. That's insane. That is absolutely somebody who did not remember to change their dummy lineup. We then look at the most duplicated lineups past that, and these are here, and you can get an idea of kind of where you fell in line at. You can then look at combinations. We'll look at the we'll look at two. So like the most common driver combinations of yesterday's slate. And yet again, this is why, when I'm talking out loud of worry about duplication or whatever, this is kind of where my mind kind of goes of what things are going on. So you look here, a combination of Connor and Ryan Sieg yesterday accounted for nearly 30% of all lineups in that contest, and so on and so forth. So you can go in here and you can goof around if you want to see, three. Yet again, we expect this to be on the site in a somewhat timely manner. Yet again, April is kind of when all the prices are going to go up here. You kind of want to get involved there. You can then go on and so forth. Okay. You can also look at your own stuff compared to the field by pulling your name through this. So I can, like, obviously I just put mine in so I can see where I was at from the field. And you can see like kind of where you're at in terms of leverage and stuff like that. And yeah, so like you can see where we're at. And so I was like under the field on Green and Hocevar, so I mean got lucky there. You can then look at user comparisons. So like if you want to, I know Aaron, I always forget if it's ACS or AC. So Aaron won like 12K yesterday. And you can then go ahead and look at, user entries and compare them. So, I had 20, he had 42. We can then look at, the duplication factor between his entries and mine. So yesterday I didn't do that decently of a job at duplication. I mean, I still had several that weren't duplicated, but I probably could have done a much better job. So I had one that was duplicated 7 times, 6, 2 at 4, 3 at 3, 2 at 2, and then I did have several lives that weren't duplicated. And we can go in and now this is a condensed version. I mean, clearly we're working on stuff. Although this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I mean, I was like, why is there only like 8 drivers on here? I'll go ahead and bring this in so people can kind of see how, but you can see where you were compared to another user. So like say if you're I think this will make it easier. Like say if you were starting and stuff back in the day, you would just pull the CSV and dick around in Excel of like trying to analyze where some of the MMA guys play compared to you and stuff like that. I think it makes it easier. And then yet again, I combine this with that I just track my laps like this throughout the race, and as I'm building, it's a tool that's worth a lot of time, and I'm excited for people to have access to it. Coming back to the Connor talk, I think that gave Jake enough time. Charles, my trip went great. I had a great time meeting many of you guys there at the track on Saturday, Sunday, or actually I wasn't there. I wasn't there Saturday because I had food poisoning, so I missed the fucking race. Right. Thank God, dude. I have season tickets that are like $150 because me and my partner got food poisoning Saturday night. But I was at the track. Saturday, and then we stayed in Atlanta Monday. We went to the Aquarium World of Coke at an NBA game, and then I met 2 people that day as well. So it was a pleasure meeting all you guys. It's always nice being able to shake your hands and just tell you guys thank you for watching my stuff. So I do appreciate that. But it was a fantastic trip. Um, Underowned plays in this for the Cup Series race. I don't really think anybody is going to be underweight comparison. Now, yet again, uh, so Stukas has his own Sims that we expect to have on the side as well at some point. I know other people who have Sims, clearly private Sims, and then we have all the other Sim products out there and stuff like that. And kind of the same spiel as yesterday. When we're looking at road courses specifically, less laps, typically less volatility of the potential outcomes that each individual driver can have, whether it's a race by race basis, whether it's just a DNF or wreck percentage, whatever the case may be. There's less variables going into these races. Okay, so because of that, projections, ownership, and Sims. If you have a decent Sim, that's not even like insult. I'm just saying if you like actually know what you're doing, all three of these combinations lean to road races or road course races being very efficient in the market in terms of what the output of Sims can be projections wise. And so, especially at road courses, we don't really have gigantic, I guess, misses in terms of ownership or in terms of projections. And so, like, if somebody's low owned at a race like this, that's for a good reason. Okay. The market is very efficient on road course races. Okay. So I don't really think we're going to have like one, super low owned or super, not played guy. For the most part, ownership should be pretty spread out today outside of like Cindric, right? But for the most part, we should see some guys in like low 30s, and then probably 10 to 12 guys in the 20s of some fashion, whether it's 28% or 22%. And then everybody else who would be in the teens and stuff like that are there because they need to be there. Okay. So when we're looking at road course races, because they're easier to project, they're easier to have uh, standard outcomes until we fucking get like 7 green white checkers and stuff. We really shouldn't have any driver that should be in play below owned or like not owned at the extent that he needs to be, Andy. We gotta get back to Jake. I see Miami and stuff are asking, but getting back to Gillish to Gillish to Connor Zillish and Jake. Now yet again, um, I have no skin in the game at all, right? I have no money on Connor. I didn't bet him. I didn't do shit, right? I know a lot of people have a lot of money on Connor today as an underdog, long shot or whatever. Long-winded rant avoided. I don't think Connor wins today. Okay. What am I giving Connor? Where do I have Connor Zillich finishing today? I have him at 39.75 DraftKings points, with a finish position of 9th. So that's my answer there. Let's see. Let's see. Favorite chalk driver to fade. Don't really have one today. Now, I mean, I don't really have like I don't go out of my way to fade chalk or whatever. Uh, I just tend to either like somebody or I don't. Yesterday, the Hocevar just now I didn't expect to go that way with Hocevar, but I just didn't play a ton of Hocevar, right? Um, but I think everything today is pretty efficient and I mean, yes, things are pretty easy to project here, but at least for the lap or the main race winner today, I think there's like 6 guys who are actually pretty live to win this race. Obviously the Hendrick Brigade. You have Reddick, SVG, Ross. I think we're gonna have a good idea who's gonna be a top 5 contender, but I think the race winner is actually kind of up in the air. Um, Now at the moment, it's looking like Reddick's would come in at around 24% ownership. We have um, Elliott, who would be at 17, give or take. Um, I'm probably gonna have probably 35 of each of those guys. That's like my lead. I don't know. but I'm just gonna hope I land on the correct lineup when I finish building stuff. Um, I like SVG today. I'll probably have 10 to 15 of him. I don't really have, especially up top when we're up top looking at where like projections are gonna fall between like SVG, Larson, Kyle Busch, Suarez, Chastain, Reddick, and Elliott. These guys are all pretty much the identical play. It comes down to what their price it is, and it comes down to like Larson has like slightly more place differential upside than like SVG by 1 point. Ross would have more than the other guys, but everybody in the top 10 outside of Wallace, Hocevar, Todd Gilliland, and probably Hamlin um, are all guys who I expect to probably maintain a right position in the top 10 today. Yet again, if that's the case, then we're having a lot of those guys by default have mid 40s in terms of DraftKings points upside today. And then you have, the 8 and 7K guys in the back of the field like Bell, Blaney, Busher, and stuff like that, who are going to probably work their way into like 14th and 15th today. They should be in the 50s or high 40s DraftKings points at the end of the race and stuff. And so I still think because of that, you're going to have to probably have exposure to guys in the top 10 who just kind of run in there all day. Um, and if they get the lead, if they get whatever through stages or whatever, like it just kind of happens and stuff. But I'm just going to try and prioritize having guys who finish in the top 20 today uh, in this race. Uh, Another race, 10, 5 laps to go. But yeah, that damn Daniel, that sucks, man. I'm so sorry. That really sucks. Let's see. So why would SVG? I mean, probably SVG is going to be like 33% owned, probably anywhere from like 33 to 38. I that's not really concern. Like if you're looking at like actual ownership, I'm not talking same-percent ownership. I'm looking at like actual ownership. Like there's nobody who's like coming at a bad ownership at all. Like SVG at like 36 or whatever. Like I'm not really concerned about being underweight or overweight. I think that's probably where he should be at. That's not super highly owned. That's just where he should probably be at and stuff. Um, what's my projection for Suarez? You can buy a membership and see that stuff. Bigger question is how much we think the field plays those. I don't know. I think probably a third of the field will probably play him. Um, Now I'm not getting to him on a projection standpoint. Yet again, I have 39.75. So like that's not gonna push him to be in a lot of my stuff. I'll probably have like 10% of him at the end of the day. But I just don't see him winning this race or even performing that decently well from a DraftKings perspective. Like, look, ninth place is great, real life. DraftKings, that's he's not working out for a point for dollar play. Um, I just like, dude, I don't know. There's some situations where I like being behind the chain link fence. So this is one of those. It's like I can't even bet in Texas, so I just get to watch like all these discords and other touts out there be like, bet long shot Connor Zillage. Then you see like fucking bet slips like 200 for Connor Zillage to win. I'm like, what are we doing, man? Um, so that's not my opinion there. AJ Allmendinger, I mean, he's in green across the board. He's in play. I don't really can't really say anything past that. Like I said, if you want my real opinion on it, especially if I don't talk about guys a lot, like I don't even know what I have AJ projected for. I mean, a lot of these guys, I mean, like I will say, like him, Chastain, Connor, Kyle Larson, um, Bell. I mean, these guys are pretty much all within like 5 to 6 points of each other, right? Just because of how tight the scoring is going to be at a road course like this. Um, like these guys are all at play. Uh, I don't really have a lead one way or another on AJ. I know I'm going to have him, but past that, I don't really have a view on him. I do believe that's it. I think we've talked about pretty much everything. We've been here for like 40 minutes. I think most people at least have an idea of where they want to go or idea of what's happening here. Thoughts of Byron. Um, I mean, I will. So, mm, where's Byron at? I will probably have a decent chunk of Byron today. Now, what does that mean? I don't know. I've made like 5 lineups so far. I plan on playing like 16 to 20. Probably less, probably because I'm not as confident in the Cup Series as I am. Like Xfinity, I just threw in like 600 yesterday, right? Probably not doing that today. So I'm probably gonna do like 16 lines for Cup. I would imagine I have Byron in probably 6 to 7 of those. I think Byron's a phenomenal play. I think it's a great play actually. Um, and I probably want to have more than what the field is going to have, and we're looking at Byron probably coming in at like 28 percent ownership. Uh, so give or take, 2 points in any direction. He's at 30 and stuff. I'll probably have like 35 to 40 percent Byron. I know you got here late, Custer, or not Custer, James. Luckily, I'm finishing up here, so you can listen to 2x and go through everything. I think we talked about a lot of stuff. I'm not really interested in any of these guys back here. I'll look at Custer specifically since you brought him up. So clearly, he's just very, very slow. Um, Actually, he's not even gonna have data that's useful here. I'm not playing Custer today. I don't like the speed that he's at compared to the rest of the field. I mean, when we're running, minute 11 seconds over here, and your average time is a minute 11, and the fast guys are running, minute. This isn't a minute second. I'm an idiot. This is 90 seconds. What, am I stupid? Am I an idiot? This is why you don't do math on stream. Look at 102 seconds. What is 102 seconds in terms of minutes, dude? 30, 40, minute 42. Yeah, they're running minute 42 here. And these guys are running, you know, minute 40s like right on the dot, if not, slightly lower. This guy's minute 139. I just have really no interest in a lot of the slower 5K guys. That's a real reason why I'm not a fan of Hamlin today at all. I think Hamlin's starting. I mean, we haven't talked about Hamlin yet. I think Hamlin's starting way too high up for what his potential outcomes are going to be. And when we then look at what he has done in these races, now yet again, Hamlin is at he's starting 11th at 71. I am probably not going to play Hamlin today at all. Just based on what he's done at road courses as of late, not even including the Chicago road course and stuff, or street course. We then look at where the fuck was I at? I was over here at practice, and then we then look at where he's at in terms of speed. Like that's so unappealing. So I know for a fact I won't have Bubba Wallace. I won't have Hocevar. I'm not going to have Hamlin. I'm not going to have Gillen. Actually, let's take it. Am I judging you too harshly, Gillen? Am I judging now way too harshly? I don't think I am. Yeah, okay, I'm not am. Yeah, so I'm not gonna. I know I'm not gonna have those four today. Yeah, past that, thank you guys for watching. If you want to access the Discord, you can get it by either buying, any of the memberships at this point. NASCAR is probably the cheapest way, cheapest barrier to entry um, in there. But past that, if you guys have any questions or whatever, you can always contact me. You can always DM me on Twitter or whatever, or tweet at me, whatever. I typically always get back to people. Um, I'm trying to think of anything else. I think that's mainly it. Best of luck. I will see you guys. Oh, wait, Daniels. What are your thoughts on targeting teams today? Feel like a track you don't need to run. So if I get a bunch of in the realm of priorities or what I want to do or how I want to build, if I have teams, then that means I just ran into teams at a track like this. That isn't a priority. That isn't a primary, secondary, or tertiary focus on me when I'm building teams. If it happens, it happens. But I'm not going out of my way to purposely stack teams on a track like this. And then so, like, Tyler A. So SVG is playable but not highlighted. I mean, I'm answering this based on where we're at in the video. I'm assuming that you either weren't here yesterday or earlier in the video when context was alluded to why these guys are green. Um, the answer to your question is yes, but there's context around why these guys are highlighted, why they're green, and I know for a fact I've gone over why they're green. Uh, it should make sense of why they're green. But answering your question, yes. Anyway, I'm heading out, guys. Thank you very much for being here. I'll see you guys later.